The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Diego Castro, bringing you the biggest headlines from around the world. Germany clears the way for Europe to send battle tanks to Ukraine, while the United States prepares to make a similar announcement. Germany said it would send 14 of its Leopard 2 tanks from its own stocks and approve shipments by other European countries. This in a bid to supply Ukraine with 2 battalions of Leopards, with the first to arrive within 3 or 4 months. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky extended his gratitude to Berlin. Meanwhile, 2 sources in the U.S. said that Washington is set to announce that it would also provide dozens of its own Abrams M1 tanks. Authorities in the U.S. found that the suspect in back-to-back shootings at 2 Northern California mushroom farms was actually an employee. The farm worker killed 7 people in 2 separate shootings in a case of workplace violence. The suspect was identified as Chun-Li Zhao, 66 years old, and was booked on suspicions of 7 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Some of his victims were Asian, others were Hispanic, and some were migrant workers. The mass shooting in Half Moon Bay came just 2 days after another gunman, also of Asian descent, killed 10 at a ballroom dance hall during a Lunar New Year celebration. A new U.S. Secret Service report shows that half of the mass attacks in the country from 2016 to 2020 were sparked by personal, domestic, or workplace disputes. The attackers were overwhelmingly men, often with histories of mental health symptoms, financial insecurity, or engaging in domestic violence. Guns were typically the weapon of choice.
These were attackers retaliating for some sort of perceived wrongs that may have been related to either personal issues, domestic situations with partners, as well as workplace issues. But if you look at the top 3, sort of 75% of attacks were carried out, mostly grievances, but also then you see ideologically motivated attacks in which attackers were conducting an attack based on targeting a certain, let's say, gender, race, or ethnic group in line with some of the theories that they had.
We will be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Heavy snow blanketed wide swathes of Japan on Wednesday. This affected traffic, forced hundreds of flight cancellations, disrupted train travel, and left at least 1 person dead. An unusually cold weather front and extreme low pressure systems set snow falling and strong winds blowing across Japan from Tuesday after causing havoc in other Asian countries earlier this week. According to media reports, at least 124 people died in freezing temperatures in Afghanistan earlier this week, while the temperature in Mohe, China's northernmost city, dropped to a record negative 53 degrees Celsius. Japan reported that snow was particularly heavy on the side of the country facing South Korea. 1 person died as a result of the storm, and 2 other deaths were being investigated as related to the storms. Back in the U.S., Meta has announced that it will restore former U.S. President Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. This move follows a 2-year suspension after the deadly Capitol Hill riot On January 6, 2021, Trump announced in November that he will make another run for the White House in 2024. The former U.S. president has 34 million followers on Facebook and 23 million on Instagram, platforms that are key vehicles for political outreach and fundraising. The social media company said in a blog post it has, quote, put new guardrails in place to deter repeat offenses. In an exclusive interview with the Associated Press, Pope Francis said being homosexual is not a crime. Let's get more details on that interview in this report.
Ser homosexual no es un delito. No es un delito. Sí, pero es pecado. Bueno, primero, distinguamos pecado por delito. Entonces, lo que se hace en un gobernatorato, lo que hace en una provincia, un gobernador, la mesa de negociado, tiene que servir al pueblo. A mí me gusta incluso los problemas donde dio tanto testimonio bueno de paciencia.
Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Peru's President Dina Boluarte has called for a national truce amid escalating protests in the country. Protesters have been demanding for Boluarte's resignation after her predecessor was ousted. At least 56 people have died, 45 of whom were killed during direct clashes with security forces. Chris Hipkins has been sworn as New Zealand's new Prime Minister following the resignation of Jacinda Ardern. Hipkins promised a back-to-basics approach on economy and what he described as the pandemic of inflation. Prior to the PM post, he served as Education and Police Minister under Ardern's administration. And Microsoft is now probing a networking issue that resulted in outage of services such as Teams and Outlook. Thousands of outage incidents were reported in India, Japan, and other countries. During the outage, most users were unable to exchange messages, join calls, or use some features. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us again at 9 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register an account now at signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. Coming right up is Agenda at 8 a.m. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News. All sides, all the time.